What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It is Monday, September 9th, 2019, start of a brand new week of insanity and political corruption and natural disasters and all the other fun things that make this show such a joy to do. And, of course, we've got things coming up this week. Wednesday will be the anniversary of 9/11. We're going to be talking about that a lot, probably mostly tomorrow and Wednesday itself here. But I did want to reprise the story that architects and engineers from 9/11 Truth had a partnership with the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and basically they did a 4-year computer study on what actually brought down World Trade Center 7, and according to their report, it's impossible for it to have been brought down by office fires, that in point of fact, all of the load-bearing members had to be cut at exactly the same moment in time, which of course was something, a point that we were making on this show right after it happened. Anyway, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. Now, following up on Hurricane Dorian, the Bahamian government has released an official death toll of 44, and they're being accused of suppressing the real number by residents who claim that they saw hundreds of bodies and that the stench of death is oppressive. Now, I'm sure that from the point of view of the Bahamian government, they're going to want the tourism to come back just as quickly as possible, and so they're going to be downplaying what happened on that island. Apparently, the Washington Post actually paid to send a reporter to Alabama to show how it escaped damage from Dorian. I mean, talk about Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, we already have a caller on the line, Jim in Illinois. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. A couple of things, and you were just talking about it. It was just reported where the administration wanted to fire several government meteorologists because they said Donald Trump was wrong regarding the hurricane. Did you hear that?
I know that there's a big stink over at NOAA where the NOAA management went with Donald Trump's views over those of its own experts. But unfortunately, we know most of the climate experts these days are compromised. They've bought into this whole global warming nonsense because that's where the funding is. That's where the money is. So, but I hadn't heard that anybody had been fired yet.
Yeah, it was Peter Baker from the New York Times. He reported where the Secretary of Commerce, William Ross, wanted to fire them, and they told them, if you say this again or you go against the president, you will be let go. And that just came out a few minutes ago.
Well, that's bad image, bad politics, and I think probably Trump should have just let it go because the hurricane is already old news and there's a lot of other stuff happening.
Right. Speaking of new news, do you think Donald Trump was really going to meet with the Taliban on Sunday?
I don't know. I mean, the way that was handled, Trump had to know that the Taliban is, in fact, still fighting the war in Afghanistan, and you sort of accept that going in for peace talks. So Trump basically invited the Taliban leadership to Camp David for supposedly secret meetings, and then got all shocked and bothered that a single American had been caught in an improvised explosive device, and the Taliban said, well, yeah, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and Trump canceled the meetings and then went public with them, which of course is going to make the Taliban leadership look bad to their own people for them even having considered having a discussion with Donald Trump. So I think this was a way to basically throw sand in the machinery leading to peace, because there are a lot of people in Washington, D.C. who do not want that war to end. There's still a lot of money to be made selling weapons for the war in Afghanistan. And there's also the public perception that if the war ends and we leave, that it represents a defeat, that we lost, that the Taliban is still in control. And already we're seeing the propaganda come on out and said, well, no, we did everything we said we were going to do in Afghanistan. So I think the U.S. is looking for an exit strategy where it doesn't look like they lost the war.
Well, doesn't the Taliban sort of remind you of the Viet Cong, where they were there dealing with the Americans for years and years, and eventually they were able to beat the Americans? Doesn't that sort of remind you of the same thing with the Taliban?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, the fact of the matter is we've been there 18 years, and the Taliban has gained ground and the U.S. has lost ground. And it really is time for the United States to just pack it all up and leave.
Right. But you know, and I know, you know, people are making money, and not only that, America, they still want to get a lot of money from those poppy plants over there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that's
again,
a big, well, I'm sure that, you know, the CIA is already entrenched within the current government. But you're right, that's a big problem. The Taliban, as opposed to the opium cultivation, when the Taliban was in charge of Afghanistan, they shut it all down. You were caught with an opium poppy, they'd take your hand off. A little draconian, but as a drug policy, it worked.
Right. Where is the Taliban getting their money from?
Oil sales, I would imagine.
Okay. Any money from, like, maybe like Russia or maybe even China or North Korea?
Could very well be. Could very well be. But they certainly have the home court advantage. We know that America's military spending is hideously wasteful. And so the Taliban doesn't need that much money to counter the U.S. forces.
Mm-hmm. Well, just like Vietnam.
Yes.
Right. Okay, Michael, you take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Balboa in Nevada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike. Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Oh, man. I've been watching on YouTube for a couple of years, and there were times that I wanted to comment, but of course it's on YouTube, so I couldn't call in. But I've been listening to you for a couple of years, and I got to tell you, I am hooked, and I am in awe of you. But anyway, I just want to tell you, no, honest to God, you've done so many things. I thought I did some stuff, but I mean, Jesus. Anyway, I wanted to plug this front sight shooting range.
Yes.
By Las Vegas, and people don't understand just what it is. These people are giving you, I think it's $700, a free, free deal, and you can go out there. You can rent machine guns, and you can, all kinds of stuff, or bring your own guns. And it's about 30 miles north of Las Vegas, in a little town called Tecopa.
Yes.
And out in the middle of the desert. And then if you wanted to, you could make a whole vacation out of it. Because another 20 or 30 miles north is a little town called Pahrump, Pahrump. It's an old Indian name.
I'm familiar with it.
Shoshone Indian. Yeah. And this place has got a few. It's where Binion had buried some of his silver and gold, and got caught. I forgot their names, but they killed Ted, his girlfriend, and her boy. She found his lover.
Yeah,
and they killed him. Everybody knew it, but he had this stuff. And her boyfriend, after they killed him, was out here and was digging up this gold and silver that this guy had buried for him. And in the middle of the night, he was out there with a tractor, and the sheriff showed up and says, what are you doing? And they said, well, we got permission, and this and that, and I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm supposed to give it to his daughter. We had agreement before he died that I was going to take care of it. So they caught him, and he's got a huge ranch there in that little town. And you can drive by, and he had horses and goats, you name it. And then another hour from there is Death Valley.
Balboa, we don't really need the tour guide of the American West here, but you were talking about Front Sight. They do have a web page that has videos that demonstrate the various training programs they have, from simple self-defense shooting all the way up to, you know, actual combat training. And now that I'm actually back here on the mainland, I'm still a little ways away from Nevada, but maybe at some point I'll get a chance to go on out there and give it a try. I mean, I haven't been shooting in years. The gun laws in Hawaii are so restrictive, and I don't think I've been to a gun range in more than 10 years. So it's time to sort of brush things up, I think.
Well, once you get settled, like I said, I just sent a little money, and I'm going to notch you back here. And I know it was expensive to, you know, and you use a little extra. So, but I was just telling you, it's not just the shooting range. If you can make it a vacation out of it, but they're very generous on offering that to people, and because you can't just go out there and bring your, but you can rent machine guns and all this stuff if you want to shoot. And I'm really shocked that they would offer that. And if people from, you know, if you're like to shoot guns and they're offering that, my God, I mean, people can't even afford to do it. That's why they don't, you know, unless you got money, of course. But it's really worth it, and people ought to take them up on that offer.
Well, I think they ought to, definitely, and they ought to take advantage of the offer through RBN. Anyway, Balboa, I'm going to let you go now here because the phone lines are starting to load up, and we're going to switch over to Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, we were talking before about this global warming thing. There's something I often bring up to people. Two questions. Number one, how come the sun, as big as it is, if it doesn't burn up completely at an exponential rate, how come it doesn't at least diminish so that we have global cooling? How come that does not occur? And the second, I just want to put a corollary to that. The second one is, since the Earth is in an elliptical orbit with an apogee and perigee, which are millions of miles apart from each other, how come the Earth does not either fly off into space or crash into the sun? Okay, these are the kind of questions I ask people like Michio Kaku. And they go with, I claim that without the hand of God constantly in control, this cannot be explained. Now, what were you going to say?
Well, I was basically going to say, as far as the sun is concerned, it's using up its nuclear fuel, and at some point in the future, it will start to run low, and that's when it will enter its expansion phase and probably swallow the Earth. As far as the objects that are in orbit around the sun, they are held there by gravity, and you can go back and, you know, talk to your Sir Isaac Newton, or if you're more interested in deeper understanding of gravity, you can look at Einstein's work on that.
Okay, but how come the differential in gravitational pull doesn't cause one of those things?
Well, there is the difference in gravity. What it does is it alters the speed, and when the Earth is closer to the sun, it's traveling faster to maintain its position in orbit. And as it goes out to the far end of the orbit, it slows down. So it actually spends more time at the far end of the orbit than at the close end of the orbit. And that's when we get the ice ages.
Okay, I consider that tenuous, but I'll go along with that. I just want to throw in one more thing. The previous Balboa, he mentioned Pahrump, Nevada. A lot of people may remember that was the main residence of the late Art Bell.
Yes.
Right. That's why I heard that name first. Right. Well, anyhow, I enjoyed the conversation. Have a nice day.
All right, have a nice day, Jim. We're going to let you go and switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
If there was a hand of God, I wish he'd smack down Washington, D.C.
I agree. I agree.
France,
well, you know,
Israel, and Saudi Arabia.
well, you know, they had that asteroid fall into the Caribbean over the weekend. Nobody even saw it coming. Maybe it's, you know, somebody out there going, you know, I'm going to get that. Oh, darn it, I missed. As a matter of fact, we've got 3 asteroids flying by the Earth today that we know of.
How much longer can this last, Mike? I hate to say it, but when's the next one going to hit? I mean,
it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time.
Well, let me tell you, Mike, with Afghanistan, 2 days before 9/11, and let me tell you, everybody, they've been making overtures to the Taliban since the Clinton days.
Yes.
They invited them there. Bush invited them to the White House. The peace pipeline, the opium, the lithium mining over there. And, you know, all of a sudden this happens. One soldier gets killed from a roadside, and then Trump cancels. Mike, Trump could have said, see, another soldier got killed. It's time to get the hell out. But he didn't. He didn't. And look at, like I said, I go back to his advisors. It's the same crew.
Yes.
So Trump's involved in all this. I know people don't want to hear that because I get the feedback. You know, Trump is part of the problem. Like, he could have easily said, this is the last soldier's going to kill. We're getting the hell out of here. He didn't. He didn't. You know, and it doesn't matter how long you stay because you don't. I think we, like the Taliban controls like the majority of the country. I think we control Kabul, that's where the Afghan puppet government is. That'd be it. You know, that's what you control. The outskirts is controlled by the Taliban, which means it's hard to get supplies in there, boys and girls. You know, it's just, you know, I look at this, I'm like, nothing is going to be done with Trump. Nothing's changed again.
Yes.
You know, like it's like a slow crawl. And then, Mike, I'm going to switch over. Like, did you hear about this? I wrote it down. Jason Greenblatt has left, and it's going to be replaced by Avi Berkowitz for that peace deal between Israel and Palestine. And Avi Berkowitz was Kushner's like assistant, like who's like a
the copy boy
settlement person. Yeah. So again, nothing's changed because I don't know. I mean, what's your take on it? I get so angry, Mike, because I'm like, we still get, you know, people calling in, holding out hope for Trump, but the dude's been bought off, man. I mean, you got people he might be getting fought by certain elements of the deep state, but there's multiple deep states.
That's true. That's an important idea to keep in mind. There is no single monolithic deep state. There are all these individual corrupt little cliques and groups that are out there with their own particular agenda, like the military-industrial complex, the security-industrial complex, the medical-industrial complex, and so forth and so on.
Which leads me, I wrote this down, to that report on the Serbian weapons being bought by a shell company.
Yes.
Called Alliant Tech Systems through the CIA that was supposed to be brought into Afghanistan to help with the training of the soldiers or to arm the government, and it went to Yemen and Syria.
Yes. Yeah.
Under Trump, Mike. Under Trump. That's under Trump. Okay.
Yes.
You know, the CIA is under Trump. He hasn't replaced or fixed.
Well, I think the CIA is a rogue agency, and they're not listening to Donald Trump anyway. Anyway, Dustin, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. We're talking about life under Trump here, and right now he's in full campaign mode for next year. Touting his wonderful economy, which doesn't look all that wonderful for most of the country. It looks to me I don't think Trump ever really intended to actually meet with the Taliban at Camp David. He basically set them up to make them look bad to their own people. And it's just their way of keeping the war going, to keep the flow of opium going, to make sure that the Taliban doesn't increase the transit fees on that oil pipeline, which was the proximate cause of all of this all those years ago. And it's about maintaining control. And I know there's a lot of people who say it's time for us to get on out, but there are a lot more of the war hawks who are saying, no, we got to stay in Afghanistan. We're better than all those other countries. This will not be our graveyard of empire.
And it is our graveyard of empire, because we are an empire and we're in decline. And Mike, we're in decline. 3,000 manufacturing jobs added. That's 3,000, not 30,000. And
yes.
34,000 government jobs added from that last report. So 3,000 manufacturing jobs is crap, people. That's nothing. Okay?
Yeah.
And like 34,000 jobs in the government sector, that's where a lot of the jobs went, for the government. Like, it's just all government. It's more than like the everything else. And Mike, I'm almost finished with my rant. The British Arms Fair that's in Britain, they banned the knives. You can't own a gun in Britain, but they got a Britain Arms Fair going on, which you're selling weapons to everybody. You know who the guest of honor is? Take a guess.
I really have no idea.
Saudi Arabia. I mean, you cannot make this up. And Saudi Arabia, who's going to ready to enrich uranium, and Mike, Saudi Arabia is hanging on by a thread because the Wahhabists, which has the madrasas, is a majority of people. If they, they can overthrow the king anytime they want, because there's more of them than the king and his minions, and they're all skedaddle out of there. So I just want to keep people in mind. Do you want these people to have the ability to do this, but yet Iran's the big terror country? It's what a joke this whole thing is. I just don't know anymore. But Mike, have a good rest of the show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and I'm apologizing for the ruckus in the background. Somebody rang the doorbell, and the house guard dog is going ballistic, so that explains what's going on out there. Okay, so the phone lines are open again. You can call on in. And getting on back to the news here, India has found their missing Vikram lunar lander. Remember, we were following the story intensely last week, where this was, going to land on the moon, and then literally at the last moment, it just disappeared, and there's been no communication. Now, over the weekend, they used a thermal sensor on the orbiter to locate the physical lander. It seems to have landed intact, but tilted. They're still trying to reestablish contact with it. No success on that yet. The one clue that has surfaced so far from the data analysis is the velocity curve, which should have been continuously declining as it got closer to the surface. About 1.2 miles above the surface, it sort of flattened out, meaning it wasn't speeding up going down to the surface of the moon, but it wasn't slowing down as much as it should. And it could have been a failure of the descent engine system, or it may have been that the lander kind of got knocked a little off kilter, and instead of braking the spacecraft, the engine was sort of skating it along, because apparently it's very close to its intended target, but not bang spot on it. But they're still out there. They're still working the problem. They're still trying to figure out a way that they can hopefully bring that back. And I wish them a lot of luck. I really do. I have sat in those chairs myself, and I know what it feels like. Now, I was very lucky, because when I sat in the chairs, the missions were mostly a success. I mean, there's always glitches. There's always going to be little glitches. But that was a wonderful experience. And Of course, I knew people who were working on missions that did fail, and I could see what it did to them. So my heart is out to those people in India, and I hope they reestablish contact because what they're trying to solve is a very important issue of, you know, the water at the South Pole of the moon. So we got to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. So stay tuned. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Turning to the domestic political scene here, it has now come on out that Hillary Clinton has been secretly giving advice to Elizabeth Warren. And this has ignited outrage in some, mockery in others, and speculation as to what's really going on here. Because why would Elizabeth Warren seek election advice from the candidate who lost? Another speculation is that maybe Hillary is thinking of stepping back in as Elizabeth's running mate. So we'll see what's going to happen out there. But apparently, both Hillary and Elizabeth are keeping quiet about what they're talking about. This coming from anonymous sources, the usual anonymous sources. Okay, Jeff Epstein is back in the news again. Boy, for a dead guy, he's getting a lot of ink. This has to do, though, with his relationship with the MIT Media Lab. Now, if you work in video or computer animation, you know the MIT Media Lab has done amazing stuff over the years. And every year at SIGGRAPH, everybody looks forward to say, what's the Media Lab going to debut here? And they've done some amazing stuff with artificial vision systems. And probably a lot of the products you're using are based on technology developed by the MIT Media Lab. And the patents are, of course, owned by MIT itself. So basically, people are allowed to donate to the Media Lab, but there is an upper limit. And it turned out that Jeffrey Epstein was donating to the MIT Media Lab and was donating far above the allowed amount. And people are wondering why. Was the Media Lab developing some technology for him that he was going to be using, well, down at the house in Florida or out in the Caribbean there? Nobody really knows. But apparently the director of the MIT Media Lab has had to resign when an expose revealed a scramble to try and conceal their ties. And this guy has apparently had his finger in a lot of pies. His name is Ito. And he stepped down from the board of directors from Pure Tech Health. And apparently he was a director over at the New York Times. And he's had to let that go. So it's a really, really bad day. But everybody, you know, again, it's amazing. For a dead guy, Epstein is still messing up people's lives. According to The Sun, flight logs reveal that Prince Andrew flew on Jeffrey Epstein's luxury private jet, the Lolita Express, 6 weeks after Epstein's arrest down in Florida. And it's another example of Andrew's close ties to the Epstein scandal. And of course, Her Highness the Queen is trying to find some way to make this all go away. But I mean, every day there's another revelation about what's been going on and who it's been going on with. Okay, now this was something that Dustin in New Jersey was talking about, but Donald Trump has appointed a new Middle East envoy. He's a 30-year-old White House administrative assistant. This guy has got no diplomatic experience whatsoever, but he used to run errands and get coffee for Jared Kushner. So Avi Berkowitz will replace former envoy Jason Greenblatt, who announced his resignation the day before. So Berkowitz has zero foreign policy experience except for being Kushner's right-hand man. So, all right, we got a caller on the line. Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Adam Green over at No More with KNOW, No More News, did a video on Avi Berkowitz and all that. And Avi Berkowitz is a Shabbat Lubavitch buddy of Kushner's, a couple of years younger. They met playing pickup basketball somewhere in some Jewish league. And he's nothing. He is a coffee boy. Just
he's a coffee boy.
Yeah, but he's a fifth columnist. He's a dedicated Israeli first or fifth columnist. So that's how he got the job, as representing the U.S. Interests in the Middle East. But the other thing I wanted to get to is Epstein and this MIT lab. They prioritized, Mike, trying to suborn and get intelligence. Technical intelligence. Israel is moving into the high tech in such a big way, and they do it in a lot of ways. As you know, they steal our defense secrets. They've been doing that for years. Resell them, but they steal all these secrets. And if so the priorities for Epstein and his mega billionaire and Israeli backers were to, suborn politicians, get business intelligence that they could use to make money, and of course steal technical secrets. And thus, the reason why this guy was so big, you'll see that Epstein was, probably didn't even know what Newton's law was, but he was a big contributor to science.
So I know what Newton's law is. One fig to a cookie.
Anyways, it's clear that that's what's going on.
Yeah,
he was trying to turn this guy to be a spy and turn over technical secrets from MIT lab. Hey, listen, they're into everything.
Yes,
the telecommunications, and this thing. I wish
they do a lot of work for the government and the military.
Yes, that's right, and. It goes back years. And you have to remember, again, I just want to remind everybody that our great president, the Black Jesus Obama, that's what he's referred to around my house, anyways, back in 2009 gave all of our intercepts, all of them, unedited, to Israel, including the head of the MIT lab and anybody else that Israel wanted to suborn and steal secrets from.
Including all the members of Congress and so forth and so on.
Judges, everything. That's right. Yeah, but believe me, they're in on these techno guys too. So it would be easy for them to figure out that this guy liked little boys or whatever it might have been, and get to him to get the secrets. So it's pervasive. And Mike, they'll never get to the bottom. I'm betting. I know you're betting the same way. They're never going to release these names or anything. It's going to be buried.
Yeah, I think the names at the last second, the judge is going to have a change of heart and say, "Well, really, we don't want to ruin the reputations of people who may have done a little something wrong years and years ago, but have they not suffered enough from public humiliation? Blah 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 blah." Blah. But we know that a lot of people have already filed lawsuits under seal to, prevent their names from being released. And of course,
I can't imagine. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The legal fees, the legal, the expenditures they're doing to try to hamstring this in every possible way they can.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of very scared people out there. I mean, this whole Epstein underage girl thing. I mean, look at the people who were showing up there. I mean, Clinton, Prince Andrew, and it's an ugly situation. And of course, there are people who want the names released for public shaming or for political leverage. And then you have a lot of people who are saying, no, don't do that. You'll wreck my career.
Hey, Mike, I guess that Epstein's rape mansion in Manhattan was right across the street from Bill Cosby.
Yeah, yeah,
Imagine that neighborhood, man.
yeah. That was a rough place there. But Bill Cosby, at least he was using women who were past the age of consent. And yes, it was wrong.
After they were drugged, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What is it about the upper levels of our society that there are such sick people?
I don't know, but I love America's dad drugging and climbing on top of women all over the place. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyways, what kind of a street was that? Can you imagine raising children around that neighborhood? Whoa. But anyways, but I'm betting you any money, Mike, that's this connection with MIT.
Yeah,
that's what it was. They're after the technical secrets.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You pointed out before, by the way, how they will re-engineer the most minor thing to get around patents, and then put it out as their own.
Yes. If they don't just outright buy the company, like Intel. Intel started as an American company. Now they're centered in Israel, and first of all those American jobs are now gone, and even worse, there's the possibility that Israel is engineering backdoors into the Intel chips.
And it's easy to do when you control Congress and the Federal Trade Commission and mergers and acquisition law, and you can print your own money. It's very easy to do that. So there we go. But anyways, that's it for me, Mike. Good luck in Santa Claus, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And the latest on that one is it looks like that we did get a lock on this rental place that we're moving into, and it's just about 2-3 miles from here. So you're not going to be rid of me that much. Okay. All right. Getting back to some serious news here. Baltimore is now on track for a record number of homicides. The city is descending into chaos, as are pretty much every city where the Democrats are in control. And so Baltimore City is basically imploding. It's suffering from a murder crisis, an opioid epidemic, a huge gap in wealth, health, education inequalities, and it's going through a period of deindustrialization. The manufacturing jobs are going away. And it's sad to see these beautiful American cities being hit like this. Now, I'm a big fan of Grand Tour, which is Amazon Prime's sort of repackaging of the three former hosts of Top Gear, Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and Richard Hammond. And they've done season 3 now, and we're sort of streaming them here on the Amazon Prime in the evening. And they did one on Detroit, and it was just horrible to see what was going on in Detroit. And they showed, the good part of the city, and then they showed the rest of it, where all the auto plants used to be. And then they did another show where they were down in Colombia, and apparently Amazon got this idea to send them out as wildlife photographers and then make a screensaver out of it. And I haven't found the screensaver yet. And looking at these cities in Colombia, at how clean and beautiful they are, it was a slap in the face. It basically shows us just how much this nation really has declined. Forget about becoming a third world nation. We're there. We are really there. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that people have stopped caring about where they live. And they're so caught up in trying to get the bills paid and, pay the taxes. And they're seeing everybody else around them just sort of give up So it was a critter crawling on my vitamin D. Alrighty, so we have a caller on the line, Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? Like a couple of things. One, how the not only mainstream news, but mainstream, or what I call corporate talk, is just completely ignoring Epstein now. I was driving down the road. I was driving today, and I was listening to. I decided to put on XM. You know, I have Sirius XM.
Yeah.
And it's a show called the David Webb Show, and Webb was there. He had somebody substitute for him, some guy named Tim Young, right? Like a half comedian, half talk show host. And this guy was talking about, you know, I don't know, various things about pretty much the Clinton tapes and all that, which is fine, but nothing about Epstein. So I decided to call. I said, and I got through right away. I said, well, what about Epstein? Why aren't you talking about Epstein, about his murder and all that, about the fact that he was running a blackmail operation against the United States, again, that the Israelis were using, you know, Mossad was using them to get a lot of their ways and all that, including what you're seeing going on in Iran. He right away says, "Oh, I can't. What do you tell you? You're a conspiracy theorist." Epstein was, you know, Epstein committed suicide. He didn't want to be spend the rest of his life in jail as a pedophile and this and that, and hung up the phone. Of course, I didn't even get a chance to explain to him that that's total BS. That if they wanted to keep him alive, they could have kept him alive in the jail, and they could have put him in the custody of U.S. Marshals if Barr, who runs Bureau of Prisons, because he's the head of the Justice Department, would have insisted on. But this is the kind of stuff. I managed to call him 2 more times, using different names, different places, but yep. I didn't disguise my voice, and got through it every time. It was the same thing. So finally I called him a Zionist shill. No, a Trump shill. I'm sorry. I called him the Trump shill, and he got upset about that. But I mean, these people are so dumb. And then I heard Hannity yesterday driving home from the gym. Again, I turned on Sirius XM, and you know, it was a repeat show. Well, I'm not sure from what day. And he has, of all people on there, the pedophile Dershowitz.
Okay.
And he's
and Mark, I got to put you on hold. Mark, I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercial. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina, talking about Jeff Epstein. And again, for a guy who we are told is dead and now buried in an unmarked grave somewhere, that he's still getting a lot of ink and a lot of press. And so, Mark, take it away.
Yeah, he's getting press, all right, but not on the mainstream corporate media and not on corporate talk. But anyway, I was listening to Hannity yesterday, like I said, coming home from the gym with a repeat, you know, one of his repeat shows. So he had, of all people on as a guest, Dershowitz, right? The pedophile Dershowitz. So instead of asking this nasty little pedophile about, you know, Epstein and about what he's been charged with, well, he hasn't been charged officially with, but 2 women have said that he raped them already.
Yeah.
Okay. Instead of asking about that, he's asking about Israel and about anti-Semitism and how terrible the anti-Semitism is. That anything pretty much against Israel is anti-Semitism, and he was going on and on about that Dershowitz. And it's unbelievable, Mike. I just don't know what's going on anymore in our society. We're you know, these people like Hannity, he makes millions of dollars to just stand there and lie and give the deep state or the what I call the empire's garbage story to you know, to push his Zionist you know, his Zionist talk. I'd say he's probably a Christian Zionist if I had to guess. You know, I'm talking about Hannity. And
Yeah.
He just lies and lies and lies and lies. And the guy's a complete idiot on top of that. But yet so many people believe it. So many people think he's real. This was what's incredible. Not only
well,
him,
not that many anymore, because if you look at the ratings, the audience numbers for the corporate media, it is they're at like an all-time low, and people are coming to the internet to try and find out what's going on, which is why now there's this effort by Facebook and Google and YouTube and all the rest of them, Twitter, to start filtering the news the way the corporate media is already doing it. And it's a way, again, of taking control of the narrative. But the difference is we know they're doing it. And therefore, we can look at what's being blocked and say, what are they hiding from us? See, back when I was a kid, Americans believed the media was being truthful and government was being honest. Later on, I found out that, even back when John F. Kennedy was killed, they were lying to us left and right. And so it's actually been going on all along. It's just in the age of the internet, we all woke up to the reality that government and corporate media was lying to us. Anyway, Mark, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to start talking about the international news this hour. Now, back on the 5th of September, Mike Pompeo was out there arguing that the U.S. war in Afghanistan was successful. I'm sure from the point of view of the American opium lords, it was successful. The pharmaceutical companies have made out like bandits and, of course, created this opioid crisis. The oil companies were happy. They got their pipeline. But remember, we were all told the war in Afghanistan was in response to 9/11, that Afghanistan had been involved in the takedown of the World Trade Towers, which, of course, that story has now gone away. But Pompeo is out there saying the war in Afghanistan was successful, and this, of course, prompted more calls. Well, if it's successful, if it's over, let's get out. That led to this whole brouhaha over the weekend, which was designed, I think, intentionally to irritate and annoy the Taliban. And if so, it has apparently succeeded, because the Taliban has launched a major offensive in West Afghanistan. Now, the Taliban controls much of Farah province going into the fight. The province is an important opium farming area, which is a potential source of revenue, which means the Taliban may have decided that opium is okay after all, at least during periods of war. And with control over much of the surrounding area, it makes sense they would want control of the provincial capital, so they're going after that as well. The Taliban has issued a statement in response to Trump abruptly canceling the Camp David meeting, which seems to imply a terrorist threat, terrorist attacks coming to the United States. Maybe it's a lie. Maybe we're going to be set up for a false flag terror attack to be blamed on Afghanistan the way 9/11 originally was, in order to keep that war going, because there are people who want that war in Afghanistan to keep on going, to keep control of the opium. The fact of the matter is that right now the Taliban's in control of much of the opium. The fact of the matter is the United States is losing that war, and they're spending more and more of your money, and they're sending more and more of your kids to be killed and crippled in it, rather than say, hey, we lost this one. And it's very hard reasoning here. They don't want to be seen as losing a war, whether it's Afghanistan or Syria, because that would basically pull the rug out from the rest of the war agenda, which, of course, is leading toward attacking Iran and an eventual war with Russia and China, which looks to be getting very, very serious right now. Over in Syria, hundreds of Russian troops deployed to Idlib in case the ceasefire collapses, which, of course, we all know from the past it will. So they're getting ready to basically garrison that as well. Meanwhile, Damascus has issued a complaint, if you will, calling that these joint U.S.-Turkish patrols along this buffer area are a flagrant violation of Syria's sovereignty. And basically saying it's a violation of international law, Syrian sovereignty, and they're absolutely right about that. When you walk into somebody else's country with a military force and you don't have their permission to be there, that really does constitute an act of war. And that's what the United States has done. Syria does not want us there. Syria has repeatedly asked for us to leave. So they're maintaining the Syrian occupation, if you will. Meanwhile, Erdogan is ramping up the war talk as Turkey pushes for nuclear weapons after this row with Russian over the missiles. And Erdogan is saying he will not accept the status quo. He believes that Turkey should have nuclear weapons, and accused Donald Trump, NATO, and Israel of hypocrisy over the S-400 deal with Russia. And, of course, the hypocrisy over the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons that everybody tries to pretend don't exist. They do. Meanwhile, over in South Lebanon, Hezbollah has shot down an Israeli surveillance drone. So they're still making stink face. Now, this may be a harbinger of things to come, in that right now Netanyahu needs a war because on September 17th, Israelis go to the polls to elect a prime minister and Knesset members. 10 parties are competing for seats. Now, polls are showing Netanyahu's Likud and Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid's Blue and White Party are basically in a tie. They're each projected to win 31 of 120 Knesset seats. And Netanyahu needs something to shift that back the other way so that he can retain his position as prime minister. Right now, he's considered an interim prime minister. And he's desperate to basically retain power ahead of this pre-indictment hearing in October on bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. And there's strong evidence against him. So will he start a war to save his own face? Well, again, look what Bill Clinton did when Monica Lewinsky was testifying before Congress, and she walked out of the Congress building expecting a phalanx of reporters on the steps, totally empty, because while she'd been inside, Clinton launched cruise missile attacks into Syria and a bunch of other places as well. All righty, let's take another phone call here. Tom in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Tom, are you there?
Yes. You hear me, Michael?
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay, yeah, Michael. Yeah, last week you had a caller saying after the hurricane in the Bahamas that all these Bahamians should come to the United States, and I think that's already happening. They're starting to bring them into West Palm Beach by the thousands. And I actually thought they were English subjects, and they should be going to England, I would think, or one of their islands that England owns. But they're all coming here. I don't know how that's going to work out, but I don't think if they're going to try to become American citizens, I'm pretty sure they're all going to vote Democrat. But I was wondering, Michael, did you have a chance to see Mark Levin last night on Life, Liberty, and Levin?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Before we move on to that, though, I read a story earlier today where apparently some of the Bahamians were kicked off the ferry going to the United States over visa requirements.
Yes, I heard that also. I heard that on the news, too. Yes, I did hear that. Well, my thing is they're English subjects. I think England should be taking care of them, and England should be going over there.
I agree.
What's that?
I said I agree.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, Michael, and also what I wanted to talk really about is what happened I saw on Levin last night, this gentleman said that Google, with the algorithms and all this, is that they can throw this 2020 election for the Democrats big time, because what they did with Hillary, even with Google and Facebook and all that, these people are definitely with the Democratic Party.
Yes, they're
getting
liberals.
Millions of more voters. I mean, if that's not investigated by the White House and dealt with severely,
yes,
just like nobody's been arrested for it with this Russia collusion. Nobody's been arrested. Clapper should be in jail. There ain't no doubt about it. Brennan
should be in jail.
Brennan should definitely be. Comey. None of these people have gone to jail. None of them. And it's disgusting, disgraceful. And, I'll tell you, Michael, what's happened to this country is mind-boggling. It's mind-blowing, actually.
Yes.
But what's really the truth of the matter is, even in New Jersey and New York and all that, these leftists have brought in those states a flood of illegals to totally wipe out the Anglo population of the United States. Let's not deny that. That's the truth.
Demographically speaking.
Definitely. They're doing it in California. I remember Costa Mesa was a wonderful place. The land of milk and honey. They had billboards all over California, land of milk and honey. Well, it ain't no land of milk and honey no more. It's a land of homelessness and destitution, prostitution, and decadence and decay. That's what I see in California.
Yes.
And it's run by a bunch of leftists. Every Democrat, and I mean, I want Dustin to hear this too. I know he's listening. I want Dustin to hear it because I think he's a good guy. But Dustin's got to really understand, every city that's run by Democrats is run into the ground. They run it into the ground. Look at a shooting over this weekend again in Chicago, Michael. Do you see that?
Yep.
Another 36 shot over the weekend.
Well, thank goodness Chicago's got strict gun control laws. That's all I can say.
Every weekend it's 30, 40, 50, 60. It's just crazy. And you know what, Michael? I think Trump, and I want to ask your opinion on air, do you think that Donald Trump should bring in the National Guard to Chicago?
I think Trump should do something, and it's really bothering me that, he's been in office for a while now, and he's not dealing with any of these issues. He's not dealing with the obvious filtration by social media. He's turned his back on the internet, and the independent media. And we were very instrumental in getting him that job. And now it's like he doesn't care anymore. He hasn't really done anything about voter integrity. He just shut that all down. And we saw during the midterm elections, the chicanery is still going on. And it's a hopeless situation. And maybe Trump has just decided it's hopeless. And maybe he's just decided that, he's going to run next year just because he likes campaigning. He does seem to enjoy that. But he's going to accept his loss gracefully. And I don't know, maybe he made a secret deal with Hillary that, he's just going to hand off the White House to her next year.
Well, Michael, I have to agree with you that Donald Trump is overwhelmed with the situation he inherited. Like he was saying today, I don't know if you saw his White House briefing today when he had all these cops that he was given a Medal of Valor for their saving all these people in, where was that, in Ohio, or Dayton, Ohio. So he had all these officers, he's giving them all medals, which was wonderful. But, he never gives the police officers in Chicago, I guess they're not doing their job because he's not giving them medals, because every weekend, 52 weeks out of the year, Michael, these cops are dealing with 20, 30, 40 mass shootings every weekend in Chicago. Every weekend. It's not, there's no low in the weather. I mean, this is a massive takedown. It's worse than Vietnam, okay? Let's not kid ourselves. This is Vietnam-type records, okay? And all these, imagine, let's put all the numbers from the FBI together in the inner cities of Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, L.A., Baltimore, on and on and on. Camden, all these places. It's crazy. And, we hear about when two white guys go off the chain, it's all these, a bunch of racists and all that. But when the inner city getting wiped out, and you can't, some areas you can't even go in. Look at what's going on in Europe, Michael. There's places you can't even go in. The cops are afraid to go in, even in Sweden.
Yeah.
I saw that on the news. It's crazy. Now, as far as Trump goes, Michael, I agree there's some things that Trump should be doing more that he can't. I guess he can, but he feels like I guess he can't. Number one is the main one, Michael, and I wish you'd talk about this a lot more for like a half hour with some expert, because I'm not an expert, but the sanctuary cities policy. The sanctuary city, Michael, is not working out. Donald Trump either arrests some people or open up all the cities a sanctuary. I'll agree with that. I don't see the federal government going in and arresting these people, the mayors, the commissioners. Why? They're breaking
I don't
federal
know
laws.
why. They're all in violation of Title VIII.
No, Israel, the state of Israel would never allow that, Michael. Israel would not allow 10 million Muslims to sneak in Israel and go get jobs and get housing and all that, would they?
No, in fact, they're trying to send the Ethiopian Jews back home now.
That's right. That's right. So this is what it is. It's a flood of illegal invasion occurred, an invasion of our country.
Yep.
Again, One American News every hour and the hour talks about the measles, the mumps, 900 in Texas alone. They don't even know how many are released into the country that have all these diseases. I mean, this has got to be dealt with. And the Republicans ain't doing nothing. The Democrats, they're communist Bolsheviks. Forget it. They're totally in the leftist whack job corner. Hollywood's run by a bunch of dark angel schmucks. I mean, it's off the chain. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't see hope for the United States. Really don't. If it wasn't for the economy doing as good as it is, I guess, this country right now, I think it'd be in utter turmoil. I'm serious.
I think we're headed there anyway because
one thing I did hear about the Bahamas.
Tom, before we go back to the Bahamas here, I don't think the economy's in that good of a shape. I mean, they're making a big deal about 6,000 jobs here or 20,000 jobs there, but with you have a population of 300 million in this country, these numbers are virtually meaningless. And you've got people who are working like two minimum wage jobs just to stay in their homes. Right. That to me is not a healthy economy.
No, I understand that, Michael. But when I was going to, I think the economy's doing better than it did under Obama. There's no question more people are working than when Obama was president. When Obama was president, I remember there was so much destitution in Ocala, Orlando, Daytona Beach, because I was up in that area all the time in the summer, and there was no jobs. I mean, now it seems like people are working. I don't see too much homeless up in those areas hardly anymore. Miami still has some, because I've been all over the state of Florida. But yeah, Trump is maybe I know he's doing better than Obama did when it comes to the economy. Immigration, I know he's doing a little better on that. But there are some things that Trump, I guess his hands are so tied because of the apparatus of the swamp that he can't do nothing. I guess the guy feels like you say he wants a campaign, and that's the only reason he's probably running, because he's probably overwhelmed. And maybe he understands who's running the country really is running the country, Michael. But it's not a good situation when Michael, like with the Green New Deal, all these people keep pouring in here.
What it comes down to is he's a weak leader because, he is the president and he does have certain powers and authorities that are, beyond question. But we keep hearing that he's very easy to manipulate, that he's very subject to flattery. If you flatter him, you'll get what you want. And he's a weak leader. And that's really what it comes down to. That's why he's walked away from the Voting Integrity Project. It's why the wall, for all the Sturm und Drang over the funding coming from the military, the wall really isn't getting built. I mean, they're building a small section of it, but that just means the people smugglers are going to have to drive a little further. And, Border Patrol will have to go out there a little bit further as well. Unless you have a solid contiguous fence all the way from the Pacific Ocean to the Rio Grande, it's not going to work. And it's got to be solid. It's got to be unclimbable. And, it's got to go down deep enough to prevent tunneling.
What happened?
And the other thing that yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, Michael, but some of that stuff I'll agree, but some of the stuff, I mean, Trump is better than what we've had in the past. There's no question about it. As far as, look at all the other leaders we had, except maybe Ronald Reagan. Reagan's the only one I can get some accolades to. But the rest of these, after Reagan, it was a disaster. Until this guy even, at least he's exposed the media for their filthy fake lies that they tell. And CNN.
Well, actually, we did that. We in the independent media did that. Okay? Let's give credit where credit is due. Okay, apparently Dustin has called back in and he wants to talk to both of us. So, Dustin, are you there?
Tom, hi. How you doing, Mike? Tom?
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
How you doing there?
Tom, nothing's changed. Obama, I voted for, the first person I voted for, I'm 49 years old now. was Obama. His hope and change. I got hoodwinked and lied to. And I voted for Trump. You know, I cried when Trump, I was so, you know, it comes to a point where, like, you know, you vote for these people and nothing's fixed. Nothing's fixed. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Well,
I agree.
Dustin, how did hope and change? How did hope and change work out for you, man? How did the hope and change?
As much as make America great again. America great again,
well,
dude.
But
America, make America great again. They're all slogans, dude. They don't.
Wait.
Okay.
Richard?
Dustin?
Tom, Dustin, I got to put you on hold.
Are you Richard?
Dustin, got to put you on hold. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll bring you both back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're on the line with both Tom in Florida and Dustin from New Jersey. And gentlemen, I want this to be civil. Everybody gets a turn to express their point of view. And obviously the issue is we have differing opinions about President Trump and his job performance. And Tom, I have to be very honest. You know, I tend to side with Dustin on this one.
Well, I understand that, Michael, but, you know, I'm still saying Trump's done more than Obama. I mean, if you want to say that Obama's done more than Trump, yeah, that's your opinion. But my opinion, I think Trump's done way more than Obama ever did for this country. He had 8 years in office, and Obama didn't do nothing. The economy was stagnant. I mean, if you want to debate Obama and Trump, I think I went hands down on that one. Yeah, go ahead, Dustin. Go ahead. I hear you.
No, Tom, they didn't either. Like, they're both part of the same oligarchy. Like, what's changed?
Okay, Dustin.
Where's the arrest?
Dustin,
Tom, where's the arrest? Where is the arrest? Sean Hannity said there's going to be freaking arrests and the indictments. Where the hell are they? I've been, since April, I've been watching. I voted for Trump. You know, like, I'm tired of this crap. I voted for Trump. Where's the indictments? Where's the arrest?
Dustin, wait a minute. Hold on, Dustin. Wait a minute, Dustin. First off, the Democratic Party and all these leftists kept saying that Donald Trump was doing Russia collusion. That was proven to be a false narrative. That was a lie.
Tom,
so there was no Russia collusion.
No. Tom, that was because there's multiple groups. It's an oligarchy. What about Trump? What's going on in Syria still? Why is Trump still in Syria? Why hasn't he pulled out of Afghanistan? How can you explain that? What about Avi Berkowitz? What about Avi Berkowitz, who Trump replaced from Jason Greensblatt, who was
Trump replaced Omarosa. That lady Omarosa was a big filthy racist. I mean, come on, Dustin. Yeah, Trump is maybe not Ronald Reagan, but he's done a lot better than Obama.
Oh my God!
Come on, if you're going to argue that, you're losing that battle.
Show?
You'll lose a war on that one.
You're fired. Trump, you're fired. How come he's not fired any of these losers and putting in people who will get jobs done?
Well, look, I'll be the first to admit that I think Donald Trump's son-in-law is a weakling.
Where's the arrest? You said, how come nobody's being arrested in these sanctuary cities? Why?
Well, can you explain that? Dustin, I agree with you on that. I agree with you. I totally agree.
Okay.
That you're right on that.
You can agree with me, but why aren't... And explain why aren't the arrests happening?
You tell me. Maybe it's because of immigration, law enforcement, DHS. I don't know. Maybe they say you can't do that because you're a racist
people
pig.
In, dude. Trump.
Well, maybe they're going to call Trump a racist pig. Maybe he's afraid to lose the election because he'll be called a racist
Trump's
pig.
Trump's not a racist. But I'm saying Trump has put these people in. Nothing's been done.
Yes.
Okay,
but let me ask you a question, Dustin. What did Obama do? What did Obama? Tell me. Now that you're talking bad about Trump, tell me what Obama did good that you liked that Obama did. I want to hear about Obama.
Nothing. He's not the black Jesus. He didn't do Mike, Tom, Obama didn't do anything either.
That's
okay.
Yeah.
I think his real name is. I think his real daddy is Frank Marshall Davis. I think his real dad was Frank Marshall Davis.
They both did neither. We're being both played. Trump has not done nothing. Why? How come there's 3,000 manufacturing jobs added for August? How do you explain that? If we're all doing so well, we're not doing well, Tom. If you look at the numbers, I got them written down right here. 34,000 government jobs, Tom. Nothing's being fixed. It's just a slow crawl of the same crap through Obama and Bush. That's it. Well, like I said, I voted for Trump, but nothing's being done. And what about his daughter with the red flag laws? Are you going to vote for him if he does anything with like taking guns? Would you vote for him?
Dustin, I will say this: you're being played in the state of New Jersey. You'd be definitely being played in that state because you're overtaxed to death.
Have a good show.
The state. Well, give up. Why are you giving up? There you go. You're giving up, so you must be a liberal. I don't know what the heck you are, but I can tell you right now, in New Jersey, you're being taken. You're getting taxed to live in death. You got tax on everything over there. Your car insurance is insane. I mean, you can almost buy a house for the car insurance you pay in New Jersey, and the homeowner's insurance. Now that state is off the charts. Same as New York. Any liberal state, like I said, Michael, all these places that are run by Democrats are run right into the ground. Am I lying?
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. Let me ask you a question here because we're almost out of time here. I'm going to have to let you both go. We've got another caller waiting on the line here. We all know that we got lied to by the government and the corporate media regarding Saddam Hussein's nuclear weapons, Assad's sarin gas, and so many other things. What makes you think they're telling us the truth about the job numbers?
Michael, that you know what? I couldn't even debate you on that because you maybe I don't know. I don't know anything too much. I don't really follow the job numbers as far as it pertains to my lifestyle, me. But from what I'm hearing, the media says even some OAN, which I trust more than any news network. I don't trust Fox or none of them. Michael, I'll tell you, One American News is the only network I trust. Trust me.
Okay, well, Tom, we're out of time.
I say that.
Tom,
maybe the jobs are better than under Obama.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones now. The lines are loading up here. Dan in Illinois. Aloha, Dan. Thank you for waiting patiently through that Dustin Tom debate. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, I'm still here. Well, I started out with one. Now I got two. Dustin mentioned government workers. I heard there was 25,000 census workers, which are actually temp workers that were hired. Yeah. So they won't be sticking around too long. Then I watched a video about the damage in the Bahamas. I can't remember which island. It wasn't the big island, but it was one of the other ones. And the guy drove around and he says, there are no police on the island, but they did have police forces. He drove around. There was no police anywhere to be found because that's what he did. He did a drive around. And the last thing, I might have called up about this before, but my uncle and my dad worked at a company in northern Illinois here that made, let's say, sensitive lenses, and I don't mean for microscopes. And there was 3 different times they caught the Israelis spying on them. This is back in the early mid-'80s when they didn't have computers, so they had to have people there to actually be spying. And they caught them 3 different times. So they haven't stopped what they were doing.
No. I mean, there was a big scandal some years ago in San Francisco. There was a big scandal when the ADL was found to be spying on Americans and sending the information back to Israel.
Yeah, they got it. They got their big network going here, and I think they're afraid to do anything about it.
Probably because
they don't know.
I mean, if Epstein was part of the Mossad's intelligence gathering apparatus, then he's got the blackmail goods on a lot of very important people in the United States of America. And basically, short of a complete replacement of the entire government, that's going to be a bit of a problem. But it's not like Israel's the only country that spies, but they do so much of it. If you'll remember, shortly before 9/11, Carl Cameron over on Fox News did a 4-part story where the FBI had uncovered the largest single foreign spy ring ever found in the United States of America, spying on behalf of Israel. And then, of course, the Fox News commentators had to chime on in and say, but there's no evidence that this Israeli spy network had anything to do with 9/11.
Yeah, well, of course they don't have nothing to do with it, but I have firsthand experience, I guess, firsthand knowledge of this happening because my father told me of this. And he said 3 times they caught
the Israelis there spying. Like I said, this was early mid 80s, and they didn't have computers, so they had to have boots on the ground doing something in this building, and they made some very sensitive type lenses, and that's what they were after. I'll let you go. I know you're busy.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Yeah, it sounds to me like lenses are being made for like the early keyhole satellites or something like that. Anyway, let's switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Real bad. I'm starting to get a real bad vibe about the 18th anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
First of all, they're bringing the Taliban into focus again with these failed peace talks, just in time, like they did before. They were bringing them up, and Osama bin Laden up before the original 9/11.
Yes.
And what really bothers me is the numerology. I mean, it's 18 years. It's going to be 18 years from 9/11. That's 6 plus 6 plus 6, right? 666. It's also 2 9s. The date is 9/11/19. And I know how these, I'm not like into this Luciferian occultism, but the people that rule the world that pull these kind of acts off, they are. I mean, it's their gang signs. And I'm just going to tell I'm going to be up on the alert, and I'm even before and after this, because I just got a bad feeling when I start looking at the numerology involved in this 9/11. And it's going to be Wednesday, and the old nursery rhyme, Wednesday's child is full of woe. It's the only one that's kind of bad. So
yes,
I don't, like I said, I don't, this is, it would, and like I say, you got the Israeli elections coming up, Trump with the election, I don't know, the economy, they could all blame it all on an attack or some kind of fiasco. So, I don't know. This one's got me a little bit. My hair's on edge because, like I said, the original 9/11 we all know was a government, false flag, and well, they'll pull it again. I mean, who knows what they're, we know what they're capable of.
Yes,
and they got away with it, and so go back to their gang, their bag of tricks. So anybody that's in law enforcement or any kind of government agencies that are listening, and that you really want to be careful, look for chatter, alert everybody that you can, because everybody's got cell phones. Try to record what happens on television if anything starts looking fishy, because
yes,
we did great work alerting the public and informing the public about 9/11. It's all out there for anybody that wants to know. And the question is, do you want to know? That's what I learned from the original 9/11 is that, it's all out there. If you really want to know, you can find out the truth about 9/11. And when the government commits a criminal act, don't expect it to ever be like given government sanction or admitted to or publicized. So
no, they're still defending the official story of the Kennedy assassinations. And, I certainly hope that you're wrong. But at this point, I get a sense of desperation from the government, that they've lost control of the people, that they've lost control of the narrative, and that, they may be desperate enough to try something like that again. But you're absolutely right. Everybody should have recorders set up on their TV sets, because any videos that don't support the official story will be deleted from the internet. It's already happened over on YouTube. A lot of the great videos about 9/11 have already been erased over there, and all that's left are the videos that pretty much support the official story. I think that really good one that I'm blanking on the guy's name. 9/11, he did this video animation, and I think that one is still up there. It would be a little bit obvious if that one were to go away. Anyway, listen, Joe, thanks a lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Robert in California. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, aloha, Mike. We'll start with, how was your move? You're kind of settling in good over there?
Well, we're currently staying with family, and it's a beautiful place. And we're supposed to be moving into our new place the 1st of October. We were talking with the rental manager, the realtor, early today, and so it looks like it's a done deal. But the old tenants are still there, and then there has to be, a clean out. And she's talking about possibly needing to replace some of the carpeting as well.
Well, by the sound of it, you've got your ducks in a row. You've got a pretty good handle on the idea of what's going on there. Hey, the first reason I called in, if you don't mind me going on a 20-second rant here, and then we'll get to the reason I actually called. Look, that little Dustin Tom thing that you guys just did there, I don't mind hearing the opinions of folks here on the network that maybe perhaps disagree with one another, but I do have to hear from Dustin a lot, and I'd like to give him some good advice since he's always calling in about responding about everybody's comments. So, hey, Dustin, I know you're still listening, and you really need to find a more polite way of communicating with folks. See, it's kind of impolite in a debate when you've already made your point and you're listening to somebody's response. If you disallow them the chance to prove their point, and then your strongest argument ends up being repeating their name over and over again until they just give up and listen to you again, it's bad form, brother. If we have to listen to you all the time, please just man up and do this responsibly, because we're all trying to do the same thing. And so, okay, my rant's over. The biggest reason I called is because we're looking at a real mess in a lot of areas here in our news. God, you've covered a bunch of it today. I'm sure you've probably got some more to go, so I'll try to get out of your hair fast. I think the biggest thing that I'm really worried about right now is, it's a combination of two things. I think that this stomping upon our Constitution that the government's doing here, and it's continuation. It's not like this just started. It's just getting kind of publicized right now. And the geopolitical problem with us failing to get along with everybody out there in the rest of the world. So pick one of the two and let's go from there.
Well, the reason the United States is not getting along with the rest of the world is they don't want to. Very clearly, the United States government has decided that the only way they can avoid a Soviet Union-style collapse is to basically try and take control of as much of the world and its resources as possible. And we know that originally that was part of the plan behind the wars in Iraq. General Wesley Clark blew the whistle on that, I think, back in 2005. Where he said, there is this plan by the United States government to invade or regime change every one of the oil-producing nations in the Middle East in order to keep that oil selling for the U.S. dollar. And
yeah, I love the comment when that particular order came across his desk, and he's like, wait, why are we doing this? And they were like, well, I don't know. We're just doing it.
Yeah. I'm only following orders.
Works.
Yeah. So anything else?
All right, go ahead. Well, no. I think I said my point. I'm sure Dustin may have a response to it, but I'll be listening.
Well,
I probably won't respond.
Dustin, don't call in. You've had your two. Do not call in again. All right. Well, Robert, we're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Scott in California. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I'm also calling about those two guys you just had squabbling. And I just wanted to read two sentences out of Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. And you probably have read it yourself. It has to do with the elections.
Yes.
But it's probably worth hearing. Can I read it?
Sure.
Okay. This is Professor Quigley, who they say knew more about how the world works than anybody alive. Okay, here we go. The argument that the two parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one perhaps of the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea acceptable only to the doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can, quote, throw the rascals out, unquote, at any election without leading to any profound or extreme shifts in policies.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to run a country.
Yeah, that's what we got. Okay, I'll let you go, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Todd in California. A lot of callers from California today. Aloha, Todd. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, I'm not too far from smelly downtown LA.
Okay.
And, you know, that's cool. Well, I wanted to call in about a few items. You know, I'm turning 55 in a few days.
Okay.
And the double nickel, I actually did not think I'd make it, to be quite honest.
Yes.
From all the things I've done. I was in the Marines. I've rock climbed. I've done a lot of stuff in my life, and I swear to you, I never thought I'd make 55, and I'm glad I'm going to. But what I wanted to say was that I'm with you 1,000% on the non-show of the lies of Donald Trump. It certainly reminds me of Bush 1, there will be no new taxes, that kind of thing. And I think really what we're starting to see is the disillusionment of the entire U.S. citizenry against the politicians, the governors.
Yes.
And there's a book out there by Dr. Marvin Olasky that wrote about the it's like 3 volumes about the Revolutionary War and some of the things that were leading up to it. You know, not only of, you know, soldiers being warehoused in people's private homes and stuff, but, you know, what you see today, you can't own anything. You can't own your home. You can't own your car. You might get to keep the shirt on your back, you know. And I've lost faith in the police. They're bought out. I've lost faith in any sort of quote-unquote department that, you know, when you have 600 departments and every single one of them has their own inside police force.
Yes.
I mean, that's including the Department of Education. We saw that here in California, 2-3 years ago. Okay. You know, them going after that young lady that owed some money and she wasn't there. And they broke that door down and hauled that man out in front of his 2 poor children. And, you know, it's over. And I do hope that everybody else sees that. I don't buy it one bit. I don't buy the church garbage anymore with the 501c3. And when I see people laud and fawn over people like Trump, I literally begin to think that they've lost their mind. You know, we clap, yes, but fine. Where's the action? Where's the arrest? Where's the propensity for all these years before he got there of saying all these things? We've seen the videos. Yes, we have. Of all these things he said that he felt about America and this and that and this and that, but it's all garbage. I think it was all fanfare and all part of the theater that he had to play for him to come and wait for his turn to be president. Okay?
I absolutely agree. Anyway, Todd, going to have to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And if you do call in, please keep it civil, allowing Dustin and Tom to have their little dialogue was an experiment on my part, which I'm declaring an abysmal failure. And we're not going to repeat that unless we have a guarantee of civility here. Getting on back to the international news, Iran is starting to use arrays of advanced centrifuges, which was prohibited by the 2015 nuclear deal, and is now threatening higher enrichment levels. Now, they're still insisting they're not seeking a nuclear weapon, but they're basically saying, 20%. And you can't build a bomb out of 20%. But it's basically symbolic because of Trump's unilateral pullout from the Iran nuclear deal, and the fact that Europe so far isn't really coming up to the plate for their commitments for the nuclear deal either. Now, Mike Pompeo is out there saying that the EU nations must take decisive action against Iran for daring to use these centrifuges and daring to threaten higher rates of enrichment. So again, this is the path to war with Iran, and Pompeo's trying to get other people to get on board with it. Now, Foreign Minister Zarif is saying that Iran's commitments reduction is actually allowed under the Iran nuclear deal, that apparently if the other signers fail to fulfill their commitments under Article 36 of the deal, that Iran is allowed to basically say, yeah, we're allowed to walk away from our commitments as well. So Iran is trying to say, we're playing by the rules here, and Mike Pompeo is out there saying, kill, 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 kill. All righty, we're going to take another phone call. Tony in Puerto Rico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You're saying aloha? Hello, yeah, you're saying aloha, you're living in Indiana. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
you know, I'm
listen,
trying to think of something else to say, but so far, you know, I came up with Who's Your, or actually somebody sent in Who's Your Daddy, but apparently there's a bunch of bars with that name and one band in the area, so I don't want to step on somebody's trademark. So, you know, I've had people who've emailed me saying, stay with Aloha America, it's your trademark, and if anybody asks what's going on, well, you know, you did the show from Hawaii for, what was it, 12, 13 years, and that's the trademark.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Mike, yesterday I was listening to the program, but I didn't understand too much about the Amazon. My question is this: if the Amazon were to be wiped out, how would that affect climate change on this planet?
Well, there'd probably be a small change. There'd be a disruption in the weather patterns over that part of the planet. There'd be a lot less moisture being put into the air. In fact, given that rainforest tends to be built on very thin layers of soil, we might see it go into desert. Okay, Tony, stay on the line. I'm going to come back to you after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Tony in Puerto Rico. And we're talking about the Amazon, specifically the jungle, that has been on fire for a while now. And, of course, the liberals are blaming it on global warming. Apparently, some people were caught deliberately setting the fires, whether it's being done to make Brazil's president look like he can't control his own country, or it could even just be people who want to clear-cut the land for more housing tracts. In fact, if you look at the Amazon very carefully through Google Earth, you'll see areas where it has been completely stripped, and you can see the streets and the avenues and already being laid on out there. What's really interesting is you're going to see these solid geometric shapes that are still jungle. These represent the territories of the indigenous people who have, you know, basically made deals saying, this is our territory and you stay out. Anyway, Tony, so what would happen if the Amazon rainforest were to disappear? Well, there wouldn't be a lot of rain in the area because trees put moisture into the air. And the global warming people like to go on over to Africa and point at Kilimanjaro and say, look at how the snow cap has shrunk on the top of Kilimanjaro. That's proof the world is warming. Actually, no, it isn't. It's proof that logging was deforesting the trees around the base of Kilimanjaro, which meant there was a lot less moisture going up the sides of the mountain to freeze during the wintertime and keep that snow cap on there. So you always have to examine the science very, very carefully on these things. But would it be a catastrophe for everybody that lives in that rainforest? Yes, it would be. It wouldn't be the end of the world for the rest of us, though. And I know that the environmentalists like to scream that the Amazon is the lungs of the planet. And there's no question that, yes, it does contribute a lot of oxygen to the atmosphere. But by far, the largest contributor of oxygen to the atmosphere is the ocean.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, what about hurricanes? Would they be more severe?
That really is not affected by the Amazon. That's really affected, obviously, out there in the hurricane birthing zones in the eastern Pacific, pardon me, and the eastern Atlantic. And that has to do with how much temperature difference there is between the surface and the upper atmosphere. And the warmer the surface or the colder the upper atmosphere, the more powerful the storms will be.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. Have a good day.
All right. Same to you. Now, getting on back to the international news, we were talking about Iran. And as it turns out, Iran has seized a ship with a Filipino crew for alleged fuel smuggling in the Gulf. This was caught by Iran's Coast Guard, and they've seized this foreign tugboat that was carrying 284,000 liters of diesel. Now, they're not saying what national flag the vessel was flying, only that the crew were Filipino. So it's going on out there. The United States has issued a statement that they will, in fact, sanction anybody who buys any oil from Iran. And I guess the memo came out a little bit late because the tanker that was briefly held, and then they tried to bribe the skipper to sail it to a country. Iran has announced that its cargo has now been offloaded. And nobody is saying how it was done or where it was done, but their oil was offloaded. They have succeeded in, making some money from their oil and basically breaking the blockade of the United States. So now the United States is threatening to sanction anyone refueling the Iran tanker. And basically saying that where it is currently berthed in the Mediterranean, there it shall stay. So it's the U.S. is really turning into this international bully. Now, National Security Advisor John Bolton is commenting on the acting IAEA chief's visit to Iran and basically making all kinds of false accusations against Iran, as usual, with zero evidence to back it up. So in a tweet on Saturday, Bolton accused Iran of concealing nuclear material and or activities amid the visit by the acting chief of the agency. So he's basically out there trying to undermine the IAEA when they come on back and say, Iran is doing X, Y, Z. There's still no evidence of a bomb being built. And Bolton can say, well, you guys were obviously idiots if you couldn't find the evidence. And by the way, they've tried that propaganda before. When inspectors couldn't find anything, the U.S. propaganda response was, well, you're dummies. You got fooled by Iran. We know they're doing all these things. You just couldn't find them. In the conflict between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia has suffered a loss of military personnel and mercenaries in a retaliatory missile strike carried out by Yemen's army soldiers and fighters from allied popular committees targeting positions in the southern region of Jizan. And basically they used 6 domestically developed Zelzal-1 missiles, that's Iranian for earthquake, and they were fired at these Saudi strongholds. And they make a point of saying domestically developed because every time Yemen fires a missile, the corporate media says, oh, Iran is obviously supplying these. Iran is the bad guy. Iran is supplying the missiles. No, Yemen is building these things themselves. Another thing that is complicating the situation over there in Yemen is apparently there is a lot of friction between the Saudi and UAE forces in South Yemen, both sides talking as if they view each other as enemies. And it's gotten so bad they could actually start another war there in South Yemen between the Saudis and the UAE, which I'm sure the people of Yemen would think was a good thing. All righty, and apparently analysts are saying that U.S. support for the Saudi war in Yemen has become a political liability, and that the reason Donald Trump keeps talking about wanting to pull out of it, the reason that Congress wants to vote to pull out of it, is they're seeing it as a political disadvantage for the coming election. And this is coming from Keith Preston, chief editor of AttackTheSystem.com. So then you have the war hawks who are out there saying, no, we have to keep helping. So it's not really Saudi Arabia's war against Yemen. It's our war against Yemen because they refuse to live under U.S. puppet rule. Years ago, we spent a lot of money and a lot of other people's children's blood putting in a puppet government in Yemen, and those ungrateful Yemeni people just kicked it out. Over in western Iraq, a convoy of over 100 U.S. military trucks crossed the border from Jordan, carrying large amounts of arms and vehicles to Ain al-Assad base. Now, nobody knows why they're there, what they're going to do. U.S. officials are refusing to comment, but it does look like the U.S. is getting ready to do something there. Over in Libya, military commander Khalifa Haftar is pressing on with his 5-month offensive to capture Tripoli. And in an interview in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday, General Ahmed al-Misman dismissed the internationally recognized Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj as powerless and negotiations as futile. And so the people of Libya want to have a Libyan running their country, not an internationally approved, internationally recognized prime minister. I mean, what a ridiculous concept that is. I mean, that didn't even exist when I was a kid. The ruler of a country has to have the permission of all other countries. So the other day we were reporting on how, pardon me, the U.S. military has deployed in Guyana, effectively completing the military encirclement of Venezuela. And apparently, last Wednesday, the Trump regime earmarked over $120 million for Colombia. Now, this is masquerading as humanitarian assistance for Venezuelans in the country. But if you remember what was going on in Central and South America in the 1980s, was the CIA's paramilitary wars. And the money that was going down there, oh, it's for humanitarian aid. No, it wasn't. It was for bombs and bullets and torture devices. And that's where the South Americans' contempt for the American people comes from. Mucking about with their country. Pakistan is now vowing the fullest possible response to India over Kashmir. I would take that seriously. Pakistan has nuclear weapons and missiles to deliver them. Here's an interesting little article. And it's basically saying that America loses the Asia Pacific as full spectrum dominance continues to fail. And yeah, they never really got that to put together. Now, U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper made some candid remarks that America's INF pullout was timed for a targeting of forces against China. He said, we want to make sure that we, as we need to, have the capability to deter Chinese bad behavior. Well, the next obvious question is, who has the ability, the capability to deter American bad behavior? Because it looks like America's really the bad behavior specialist. We're the bad boys on the block. So another analyst is saying that, yes, the United States, in quitting the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, is preparing to take on Russia and China. And apparently they've already got modifications they've made to the Trident II submarine-launched ballistic missiles. And the USS Nebraska received the first series of improved Trident missiles in 2013, dubbed D5 Life Extension. The missiles have improved range and electronics and would remain in service until the 2040s, unless, of course, they get used. Over in Hong Kong, and fueling the suspicions of those who think the United States is behind the protests there, pardon me, the Hong Kong protesters are urging Donald Trump to liberate Hong Kong. They did a march on the U.S. consulate, and basically the protesters were heard calling for President Trump to liberate the Chinese-controlled territory. Now, is this a put-up job? Is this going to be the excuse to go to war with China? It does seem like we're getting ready to, you know, and again, one of the reasons that Claire and I left Hawaii for Indiana is our former domicile, looking out the back patio, porch, window area, overlooked Pearl Harbor. And I'm keenly aware, I'm sure you're all keenly aware, that U.S. entry into World War II began at Pearl Harbor. And so I had a very, very real concern. If we get into a shooting war with Russia and China, that Hawaii will get hit. And a lot of people I talked to in Hawaii had the same concern, but they weren't ready to leave yet. All right, this is right out of Dr. Strangelove and those last closing scenes here. U.S. experts are proposing having artificial intelligence control nuclear weapons. Boy, this comes right out of, I mean, forget Dr. Strangelove. This is right out of Skynet, the Terminator. So they want to give artificial intelligence control over the launch button, figuring that the human chain of command might not be fast enough. That is a very, very scary situation, especially given the poor quality software that our military-industrial complex produces. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense is giving up on particle beam weapons. They're still pushing hard into directed energy technologies, particularly lasers, but neutral particle beam weapons are just being abandoned. They can't get them to work. They're not going to get the long-range lasers to work either because of thermal blooming. But hey, it's money for the military-industrial complex, and that's all that really matters right here. All right, let's talk a little bit about the economic news here. Now, BRICS is kind of stalled, and part of the problem is the social intolerance and brutalism delivered by Captain Bolsonaro of Brazil. But in its place, we're now seeing RIC, Russia, India, China. They're pulling together. They're forming their own coalition. It's alive and well and thriving, and they're getting ready to continue on the Silk Road project. Meanwhile, China has boosted their gold reserves by nearly 100 tons. That is a lot of gold. Russia, as we head into the winter, is boosting gas supplies to Europe while still working out a transit deal with Ukraine. That's showing a lot of good faith. Another little piece of good news from Russia, Ukraine. They've arranged a prisoner swap. So maybe common sense is starting to break out over there. Saudi Arabia is going to cut oil production in an attempt to send prices up across the globe. And they're doing this, you know, as the U.S.-China trade war stokes fears of a worldwide recession, which, yeah, the indicators are definitely there, possibly in the next year and a half. All righty. Apparently over in North Alabama, one of the schools there removed the bathroom stall doors specifically to combat vaping. Apparently the kids are sneaking into the bathroom. Well, they're walking into the bathroom, and once they're in the bathroom stall with the door closed, they get out and vape. And there is no odor. And unless you've got one of these huge vaping devices, if it's just a little e-cig, there's no detectable smoke. So the North Carolina school North Alabama school just decided they were going to deal with that by taking the doors off. I can imagine some parents are probably going to be a little upset with that. Now, the other day we were talking about how this dean over at the University of Alabama had come on out with a comment saying that the American flag represents a systemic history of racism for my people. And this was like one escalation step up from the story we had about the Betsy Ross flag being asked to leave a sporting event, or the people who were holding it. Well, apparently that dean at the University of Alabama has now resigned. His comment provoked a huge backlash, as it should. I shared that story with a lot of people around here, and they were just absolutely incensed. Yes, there's a lot of bad things that are connected to the flag of the United States of America, but there's a lot of good things as well. All right, we got to take another break here for commercials, and we will be right back with the rest of the program. All right, so we're talking with Ed in Utah. Ed, what's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I wanted to talk about Epstein. I first want to ask you, as I asked to Robert last night, on the alternative media and nearly nothing on the mainstream, no follow-up at all about the mental background of a Torah, the supposed shooter there in Midland, Odessa, Texas. And so I just wanted to, I guess, put in a mild request to you, if you come up with anything on a Tory. It seems strange. The police initially didn't even want to give his name out.
Yes.
So I have some suspicions. They're using the excuse they're saying about the Cruces shooter in El Paso. They're saying, well, we don't want to give them notoriety. That is a lame excuse. They don't want people going to the search engine or finding out about these people's backgrounds like we did on the Cruces, whose father, as you know, was MK Ultra and even Manchurian Candidate training. So anyway, if you do come across a Tory, if you could post it on what really happened, I'd sure look at it.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, and I called you about Epstein. I just want to commend RBN in general for tying so much together. Here, this blackmailing billionaire, here he was blackmailing American politicians into silence about 9/11. And Whitney Webb, that posting on RBM, that is just absolutely amazing. I've seen her on other things on realnews.com. She doesn't look, Mike, but mid-30s, a brave gal, American, living down in Argentina. I don't know what's behind that. If it's just the way where she's at, or if it's part of her protection, I don't know. But I do know her reports are on the writing level of Wayne Madsen of the Village Voice, formerly.
Yes.
And yeah, and reminds me a little bit of Pat Buchanan. She's a good writer. But anyway, to tie in Epstein, he's the Rosetta Stone to all of this, Mike, in my view. The blackmailer of 9/11, the man that's now maybe involved in this brain mapping, which they're going to bring up next week or even later this week in Congress on the gun control, to brain map and do criminal behavior predictive measures. And they're using that company that she pointed out, Cordine 9/11, which he was the sole financier of, Epstein. so I just wanted to kind of put out in words what I'm reading on the different websites, mainly RBN, RBN with that link to Whitney Webb, and your commentary.
Well, my commentary is basically we don't actually know who Epstein was blackmailing. I mean, that's the whole issue of this judge agreeing to release a whole bunch of these files. But it's obvious that Epstein set up his Manhattan home, his Florida home, and that little island in the Caribbean. They were definitely set up to lure the rich and famous in, tempt them with sex with underage girls, and get it all on tape for blackmail material. And, you know, I mean, they had people, again, like Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton, fell into that honey trap. And so it's kind of hard to say that we don't know that there's anybody who didn't fall for the honey trap. It's not just politicians, it's business leaders. Was he involved in silencing people on 9/11? Could be, maybe. We don't actually know. Anyway, listen, Ed, got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, when the open borders started happening and the refugees were pouring on in, and everybody was talking about impacts on the economy and impacts on our culture and our history, one of the issues that a lot of people raised was there's a health threat here. These people are not being screened for illnesses. And, you know, at first they were talking about things like scabies, H1N1. Now it's getting really serious. We are starting to get diseases from the dark ages re-emerging. Now, one of those is typhus. This is a disease carried by fleas that feed on rats, which in turn feed on the garbage and sewage that is prominent in these people-packed typhus zones. Now, although typhus can be treated with antibiotics, the challenge is to identify and treat the disease in resistant, hard-to-access populations, such as the homeless or the extremely poor in developing countries. So as we're seeing more and more of these communities of homeless and illegal immigrants, typhus could spread faster than it could be cured. Now, Dr. Mark Siegel of New York University's Langone Health Center is concerned that we may see an outbreak of leprosy among the homeless people. Now, again, leprosy can be cured, but it can spread faster than the doctors can keep up with it. Now, leprosy is not particularly contagious. It's got a low R0, but the combination of poor hygiene, a lack of shelter, and inaccessible medical treatment among the homeless creates a perfect condition for the disease, according to Dr. Siegel. Left untreated, leprosy can cause blindness or permanent disability. And Central and South America have more than 20,000 new cases a year, with sporadic cases continuing to be brought across our southern border undetected. So it's happening. It's really happening. The liberal open border people, they don't care if you get typhus or if you get leprosy. Or maybe they're hoping that it will be confined to the conservatives. I'm not really sure about that. Over in India, there's a big brouhaha being raised over the BT cotton. Now, BT cotton was the first genetically modified crop plant to be approved for commercial cultivation in India. And farmers were encouraged to use these magic seeds. And the reality is it was a disaster. The BT cotton turned out to be less resistant to variations in hydrology than the natural variety. And a lot of crops failed. A lot of farmers lost their farms. A lot of farmers committed suicide. There was a big, huge problem there. But the government of India, with Modi at the head of it, is out. They've literally been running a propaganda campaign to convince the people of India that BT cotton was a success after all, and it's part of this current program to adopt a new range of GM food crops, amounting to what would be a full-scale entry of GM technology into Indian agriculture. So Monsanto is out there just pushing what they can push, or whoever BT cotton is manufactured by. And again, it's a dangerous technology. It's being marketed recklessly. And again, even when there's an obvious disaster, it's hushed up, it's covered up. You know, oh, the newspaper says this is a huge success, let's plant some. Now, up in Canada, this is an interesting story, and it actually made the American corporate media. Up in Canada, there is the world's deepest mine, the Kidd Mine. And it's the deepest spot ever explored on land, and the reservoir of the oldest known water. 7,900 feet below the surface. We're talking roughly a mile and a half. In permanent darkness and in waters that have remained unconnected with the surface for up to 2 billion years, it turns out the mine is teeming with life. Now, scientists had previously said nothing could live in these conditions. You know, you have to be in the ocean. There has to be sunlight. You have to be on the surface. There has to be oxygen. You know, that's life as we know it. Registered trademark. But last July, a team led by University of Toronto geologist Barbara Sherwood Lawler reported that at the bottom of this mine, there's a population of remarkable microbes. And the way they are surviving, they don't need oxygen because they breathe sulfur compounds. Nor do they need sunlight. Instead, they live off chemicals in the surrounding rock, in particular, the glittery mineral pyrite, commonly known as fool's gold. Now, interestingly enough, the life that is living around the deep ocean thermal vents, which are also away from the sun, they also breathe sulfur compounds because that's what's pouring out of the ground there. And I mention this story for two reasons. One, we have to stop thinking about life on other worlds as being just like us, on planets that are just like Earth. Class M is what they called it on Star Trek. Because as we find more and more of these extremophiles just on our own planet, it is very obvious that life is going to evolve under all kinds of conditions. As long as there's an energy source and some kind of liquid medium, sooner or later, a self-replicating molecule is going to form, and that's the beginning. That's what starts the chain of life. Now, the other reason I wanted to mention this is because of a theory I've had for quite some time, and it has to do with the life forms around the deep ocean vents. Because a lot of people are saying, how did they get down there from the surface? And how did they learn to survive so quickly? Well, I think we've got it backwards. I think the cradle of life here on the surface began in those deep ocean vents. And we know from the work of Dr. Robert Ballard, every once in a while, those deep ocean vents will shut off. They'll collapse internally. And you'll see a lot of the remains of the ecosystem on the ground. But what if, bit by bit, some of these life forms did find their way to the surface and did learn to live on oxygen? I mean, if you look at the life forms down there on the thermal vents, a lot of them are very strange. We don't see them here on the surface, but a lot of them are very familiar, like shrimp, crustaceans. So there's definitely a connection there. And I really do think that a case could be made that life actually began in the deep ocean. Not just the shallow ocean, but the deep ocean. And then eventually made its way on to land. But this is an exciting story. I mean, you've got these microbes breathing sulfur, eating sulfur, and eating iron pyrite. Okay. All righty. Over in Sweden, Professor Magnus Soderlund of Stockholm School of Economics is out there pushing this idea that humans should learn to accept cannibalism again because eating each other is more sustainable than the meat industry. This guy's serious. So he's out there saying that, we should consume the dead bodies. Now, not the first time in history it's happened. Polynesia tended to eat their dead, more for religious reasons than nutrition. But that's how wacko this whole liberal, green, ecological movement is becoming. Now they want us to eat each other. And I understand that throughout history, there has been a lot of instances of various cultures engaging in cannibalism. Virtually every major racial group of the human race at one point or another in history has engaged in this kind of behavior. All righty, here we go, and let's see. There we are. Still having to deal with Windows 10 here. All right. Apparently, the United Nations head of global communications says America has no right to protect its own borders and that migrants have a right to cross anytime they want. Really? Who gets to say that? I don't recognize the United Nations as having that kind of an authority over us. Okay. David Stockman is looking at an unprecedented collapse of the global financial system. Well, yeah, because it's all based on private central banking, which is all based on the idea of creating money out of thin air, loaning it into circulation at interest, thereby building up more debt than money with which to pay the debt. At some point, it does have to collapse, and I think we're getting close there. Apparently, somebody's floating the idea of bicycle licenses, license plates for bicycle, for which you would pay the local government a fee. There's been a new study that is finding a strong link between glyphosate and human liver disease. Yet one more strike against glyphosate, but by golly, it's making us money. We gotta keep it on out there. Okay. Apparently the CIA is in damage control mode over a report that it extracted their top spy from Russia, fearing exposure, aided by Trump. So human intelligence is still going on here. College kids are increasingly wanting to be paid in gold. And there are actually a few companies in this country where the employees are paid their weekly salaries after taxes in gold coins. And they really kind of like that idea. Especially right now with the U.S.-China trade war. Gold prices are going up. There are some people saying they could hit 3,000 by the end of the year. Alrighty. Apparently, the state attorney generals unveil a sweeping antitrust probe against Google on the steps of the Supreme Court. Well, hallelujah for that one. It's about time. And they're pushing for the breakup of Google. And I think that would be a good idea. And we could have lots of little Googles, or Googlettes, if you will. And yeah, these corporations, they have too much power over what we're saying. And by the way, I got an email saying that apparently whoever it was who compromised Google and YouTube and Twitter, they're now at work on the other alternative search engines. They're trying to slam that gate as hard as they can. Okay. We already talked about that. University study finds that fire did not bring down Tower 7. Alrighty. So we're getting close to the end of the show here. So let's start talking about 9/11. Wednesday's the anniversary. 18 years it's been. And it's one of those events that sticks with you. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was awakened by a phone call. Somebody said, turn on the TV right now. And I turned it on just in time to see the second plane at the second tower. And they were rambling on about Osama bin Laden. And I had already noted that Osama bin Laden was being pre-sold on the corporate media for a month in advance. This guy was just everywhere and hadn't really done anything. But, oh, he's evil. He hates our country. And the instant I saw that impact, I said, this is fake. This is absolutely fake. And everything that has come out since then just reinforces that. This latest report from the University of Alaska confirms one of my earlier conclusions. Building 7 fell straight down into its footprint because all of the load-bearing members were sheared off at exactly the same time. Don't forget, we have those photos that show the scars of cutter charges on the load-bearing members. They're just hoping that American people are too dumb to realize what they're looking at. Wrong on that one. So then there was that BBC News presenter was standing in a skyscraper just uptown from where the World Trade Center was, talking about the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 while it was still standing there behind her. 26 minutes before it actually happened. BBC was asked, how did that happen? They say, we don't really know. And in any event, we've destroyed all those tapes. And that was nonsense. I've worked in TV news long enough to know you don't destroy original video footage. It's a gold mine because it will be licensed and rented over and over going into the future. All right, we're going to take a break for our final commercial break, and we're going to be back with the last segment of this program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I'm just putting up one of the 9/11 stories that we have at the website. And this one is about shaped charges and the signs of demolition on the load-bearing members of the World Trade Towers here. Okay, so there we are. Okay, there we are. So that'll be up on the website as soon as it clears the cache. And I'm going to start posting a lot more of these things in the next couple of days here. But Wednesday is the anniversary. And I know after 18 years, a lot of people are saying, you know, who cares anymore? But there we go. All righty. Boy, this Windows 10 machine is such an annoyance. I think once I'm in the new home and back to using my main studio, I'm going to turn this into a Linux box. Because it is just way too much. Alrighty. All right, so 9/11, we know it was an inside job. We know that certain people knew it was going to happen ahead of time. And we had Dick Cheney there in the Pentagon, just sort of watching that airplane come in to hit the Pentagon. And we had the anyway, we had the obvious propaganda campaign out there, like, oh, there was no plane at the Pentagon, you know, and you guys are all kooks and loonies and stuff. And I think probably it was at that point they began to realize that they had, in fact, lost control of much of the narrative. And so, but I do remember it like it happened yesterday. I'm sure probably you do as well. I remember the day we found out Kennedy had been shot. I was playing in the schoolyard at the school in the farming town where I grew up. These things do stick with you. And on the basis of this hoax, we got launched into World War III. Just like on the basis of the hoax at Pearl Harbor, we got launched into World War II. And it seems to happen over and over again. And I'm in agreement with that guy who called in earlier to the show that we need to be very careful that we're not being set up yet again for a false flag. All right, there we go. And here comes the rest of the family. By the way, your dog is getting his own or her own fan club. All right, so we're coming up here on the end of the show, and hopefully we'll have. Well, yeah, there's the music. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. And please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know. Please donate to RBN. They really need the help right now. There's no question about it. And donate to whatreallyhappened.com. And we'll just see you all tomorrow.